The station floated in silence above a dying red star. Its light was weak and heavy, falling across the cold metal walls like blood dripping through glass. The corridors were long and empty, filled with shadows that moved when the lights flickered. Machines hummed in the distance, and every sound echoed like a ghost passing through steel. He walked slowly, his boots pressing against the metal floor, each step sharp in the silence. The air was thin, the smell of rust mixing with burned wires. It was not a place for comfort. It was a place where secrets waited. The galaxy was quiet that night. The council chambers were closed, and the alien fleets were resting far away. But something about the silence felt wrong, like the moment before a storm. The kind of silence that makes even strong men afraid to breathe. And then, it happened. A whisper. It was soft, broken, almost like static through an old radio. He turned, his heart rising, but no one was there. Only the corridor stretched behind him, dark and endless. He closed his eyes for a moment, telling himself it was nothing. But when he opened them, the whisper came again. Closer this time, sharper, as if it was calling his name. He felt his chest tighten. Fear crept through him like cold water. He was not a man who believed in ghosts or spirits. He had seen war, death, and destruction. But this was different. This was the kind of fear that lived inside the bones. I still remember that night, he whispered to himself, though no one was listening. It was the night when everything began. The night when humans, the weakest species of the galaxy, stepped into the shadows of destiny. The night that changed how the stars looked at Earth forever. The whisper faded, but the fear stayed. He moved down the corridor, his eyes catching the dull red glow of the star outside the glass panels. The dying sun pulsed slowly as if its last heartbeat echoed across the void. He felt the vibration of the station under his boots like it too was afraid. At the far end of the hall, a door stood half open. Light leaked from inside, a pale blue that flickered like candle flames. He pushed it open, and the sound of machines filled his ears, clicking, buzzing, grinding. In the center of the room, screens glowed with strange symbols, alien codes flashing faster than he could read. He was not alone. A shadow moved across the screen. He froze. His breath caught in his throat, his eyes scanning the room. The shadow did not return, but the fear did. He stepped closer, the machines whispering like 1,000 voices in a storm. Something was wrong with the data. He could feel it even before he understood it. The numbers, the signals, they were not normal. They were not safe. For years, humans had been ignored in the Galactic Council, treated as weak, as fragile, as children among giants. The stronger alien races called them useless, soft, and harmless. They laughed at Earth, mocked human history, and told them to stay quiet in the corner of the stars. But now, something had changed. The whisper grew again, but this time it was not sound. It was in his mind. A pulse, a voice, something that did not belong to him. His hands shook as he touched the screen, the glow reflecting in his eyes. The numbers danced and twisted, forming shapes that were almost words, almost warnings. The station groaned. Lights flickered, alarms chirped once and then died. He looked around, his chest rising and falling, sweat gathering on his forehead. He felt like someone was watching him, not from the room, not from the station, but from beyond. From the dark, between the stars. He tried to speak, but his voice was caught in his throat. The whisper grew stronger, pressing into his ears, into his skull. He closed his eyes, and in the blackness he saw something. A flash, a vision, fire across the skies. Ships breaking in half. Screams lost in the vacuum of space. The galaxy trembling. He gasped, stepping back from the screen. The vision faded, but the whisper stayed. Soft and cruel, like a secret he was not supposed to know. He gripped the edge of the console, his knuckles white. For a moment, the room was silent again. The machines stopped, the lights steadied. It was as if nothing had happened. But he knew. Deep inside, he knew. This was only the beginning. He walked out of the room, the door sliding shut behind him. The corridor stretched ahead, longer than before, darker than before. His boots echoed with each step, and the sound followed him like a shadow. He told himself he was not afraid. He told himself it was only a trick of the mind. but his heart knew better. Fear had found him, and it was not going to leave. That night, the galaxy was quiet, but in the silence a secret had woken. And he was the first to hear it, and that was the first time he realized the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. The council chamber was vast, a circle of silver walls rising into the shadows of a high dome. Lights glowed faintly above, casting pale blue rings across the polished floor. At the center, the seats of the council formed a perfect circle, each one raised for the alien delegates who ruled the galaxy. Their voices filled the air, deep, heavy, sharp, and cruel. Humans sat at the edge. Always at the edge. Their seat was the smallest, their place the lowest. For years, that had been their fate. The alien races did not respect them. The tall Vrakor, with their scales like iron, laughed at the fragile bones of humans. The silent Arthian, whose minds could move objects, called humans mind-blind. And the proud Kelnari, shining with silver skin, spoke as if humans were insects crawling between the stars. That day was no different. The chamber echoed with mocking voices. "Humans are weak," one delegate said, his sharp teeth flashing under the lights. "They do not belong in war, only in service." Another added, "They break too easily. They bleed too quickly. What use are they to the galaxy?" Every insult fell heavy, but the humans sat quietly. They had learned to listen, to wait, to endure. But deep inside, a storm was building. Far away on the cold space station near the dying star, the strange signal continued to whisper. No one in the council spoke of it. No alien admitted its danger. They buried it under false reports and locked files. But the humans knew something was being hidden. He, the man who heard the whisper first, sat in silence as the voices rose. He looked around the chamber, watching the arrogance of the others. They thought they controlled everything. They thought humans were blind, but they were wrong. He remembered the vision from that night, the fire, the broken ships, the screams. He felt it again, like a shadow behind his eyes, and he knew without question that something terrible was coming. The storm. The chamber doors opened suddenly, hissing as the guards stepped aside. A messenger walked quickly to the council's center, his face pale, his hands shaking. The entire hall grew silent. Even the proud Vrakor leaned forward to listen. The messenger spoke in a trembling voice. "A signal has been detected from the dark sectors. It is growing stronger." The silence was sharp. 1,000 eyes turned toward the humans as if blaming them. But the man only lowered his gaze, hiding the truth. He already knew. He had seen it in the vision. The delegates erupted into noise. Some demanded immediate action. Some shouted for silence. Some laughed, claiming it was only static, nothing to fear. The chamber was chaos, voices clashing like storms across the walls. Through it all, the humans said nothing. They listened. They watched. And they remembered. The man could feel the arrogance in every word the aliens spoke. They thought they could control the galaxy forever. They thought nothing could threaten them. But they were wrong. The signal was not random. It was a warning. And soon, it would be too late. That night, as the chamber lights dimmed and the council dismissed its members, the humans walked out quietly. They did not protest. They did not argue. But inside them, something was burning. The storm was coming, and when it broke, the galaxy would learn the truth. The man returned to the station where it had all begun. The corridors were darker now, the hum of the machines louder, almost angry. He sat before the screens again, watching the strange symbols twist and turn across the glass. Each one pulsed like a heartbeat, and then he saw it, hidden in the code. A shape, almost like a map, almost like a face. His blood ran cold. This was no random signal. This was a message, not for the council, not for the galaxy, for the humans. The whisper returned, soft and dangerous. He pressed his hands against his ears, but the sound was inside him now, deep in his skull, deeper in his soul. It spoke no words, yet he understood it. It told him what was coming. It told him the truth the aliens refused to see. The galaxy was not safe. The galaxy was not strong. The galaxy was weak, and the storm would break it. He stood, his eyes fixed on the red star outside the glass. Its light was fading, collapsing, falling into itself. It was a mirror of what was to come. He whispered under his breath, words that no one else would hear. They think we are weak. They think we will break. But when the storm comes, they will learn. The station shook, the lights flickering once more. The whisper faded, but the fear stayed. And with it, a strange feeling grew. Hope. The storm was gathering. And humans were ready. The space station drifted in silence, but inside, the machines never stopped. Their hum was steady, like a heartbeat hidden in the walls. Screens glowed in the darkness, covered with strange symbols that shifted like shadows. He sat before them, the man who first heard the whisper, his eyes heavy with fear and curiosity. Each time the symbols changed, his chest tightened. He knew they were not just numbers. They were directions, a warning, and maybe a plan. Humans were never seen as dangerous. The galaxy thought of them as weak, fragile, simple. The Council treated them like children, never trusting them with secrets of war or weapons of power. But that judgment was their mistake, because humans had built something, not a weapon of metal and fire, not a machine that could destroy planets. No, what they had built was hidden deeper, something no alien would ever expect. Unity. For years, humans had been mocked and pushed aside, but they learned from every insult. They learned from every defeat. They carried their pain like fire inside them, and they turned it into strength. The galaxy never understood this. The galaxy thought strength was in claws, in lasers, in fleets of ships. But humans knew better. Strength was in sacrifice. Strength was in standing when everyone else had fallen. Strength was in refusing to give up, even when the universe told you to. That was their hidden weapon. But the man knew it was not enough. The signal was still there, growing louder every day. Something was coming. Something that would test every race, every planet, every ship. And when it came, the Council would not be ready. He leaned closer to the screen. His fingers tapped on the console, trying to translate the strange symbols. They pulsed, flashing faster and faster until finally one word formed in his mind. Invasion! The room grew colder. His breath caught in his throat. He whispered the word again as if speaking it made it more real. Invasion! He stood quickly, his chair sliding back across the floor. The air was heavy, the lights flickering again. He could hear the whisper return, soft and broken, filling the room like smoke, and this time, the whisper was clear. They will come. He froze, his heart racing. Who was speaking? Was it the enemy? Or was it something else? He could not tell. But the fear in his chest was real, and it pressed against his ribs like a knife. The Council had to know. But he also knew the truth. If he told them, they would laugh. They would say it was a human trick, a human lie, a human weakness. They never listened. They never believed. So he made a choice. He would tell only the humans. That night, in a quiet chamber hidden deep in the station, he gathered them. Soldiers, engineers, scientists, even farmers from Earth who had come to work in space. They sat in silence as he told them what he had seen, what he had heard. He showed them the symbols, the patterns, the word that burned in his mind. Invasion. At first there was fear. Faces turned pale, voices shook. But then slowly, one by one, they nodded. No one ran. No one denied it. They believed him, because humans knew how to listen to fear. They knew how to carry it, how to fight through it. The man looked around the room, his voice steady now. The Council will not help us. The others will not believe us. But if we are right, if this invasion is real, then we cannot wait. We must prepare. We must stand together, because no one else will stand for us. Silence filled the chamber. Then a single voice broke it. Tell us what to do. That was the moment it began. The hidden weapon was not a machine. It was not a fleet. It was people, ordinary humans who refused to give up. They started working in secret, building defenses, creating codes, training in silence. They shared no reports with the Council, no warnings to the other races. It was their secret. The man walked the corridors every night, the whisper following him, the vision haunting him. He saw fire in the skies, ships broken, screams across the stars. He knew what was coming, but he also knew something else. Humans were ready. The aliens called them weak. But weakness can hide strength, and when the storm came, that hidden strength would shock the galaxy. For now, the whisper was quiet. The lights on the station were calm, but in the silence the humans worked. And in their hearts, the fire burned. And when the enemy finally arrived, they would not be facing the weak species. The galaxy thought they knew. They would be facing something else, something stronger, something unstoppable, the hidden weapon of humanity. The night began in silence. The humans were still working in secret, hidden away in the dark corners of the space station. Their hands moved quickly over controls, their voices low, their eyes sharp with focus. They trained with old weapons, patched broken ships, and prepared for a storm no one else believed in. But then the silence broke. It started with a sound, deep, low, and endless. A vibration that shook the walls and made the air itself tremble. The man who had heard the whisper first looked up, his chest tight. He knew instantly. The storm had arrived. The alarms screamed. Red lights flashed across the corridors, painting the walls like blood. The hum of machines turned into a roar, and the ground shook under heavy impact. The station was alive with panic. And then, through the wide glass of the observation deck, they saw it. The sky was on fire. Dozens of ships tore out of the darkness, their shapes sharp and monstrous. They were not like council ships. They were built for war. Black metal glowed with burning heat, their engines screaming like beasts. They moved fast, surrounding the station in seconds. The invasion had begun. The council reacted too late. Their fleet scrambled, ships lifting from hangars in a rush, but the enemy was already there. Explosions lit the void, white fire against the black of space. Pieces of metal spun through the stars, glowing as they burned. Inside the station, chaos ruled. Doors slammed shut, voices shouted, alarms screamed louder. Soldiers ran through the halls, their boots echoing like thunder. Children cried, mothers pulled them close, and engineers worked desperately to keep the power alive. And in the middle of it all, the humans stood. The man's voice rose above the chaos. "Hold the lines! Do not give in!" For years, the galaxy had thought humans were weak. But in that moment, no one was weaker. No one was stronger. They were simply alive, and they would fight for that life. The first strike hit hard. A massive blast shook the entire station, throwing people to the floor. Lights shattered, sparks fell from the ceiling, smoke filled the air. The sound was deafening, metal screaming as the walls bent under pressure. The man pulled himself up, coughing, his ears ringing. Through the smoke, he saw them, alien invaders storming the corridors. Tall, armored, with weapons glowing red. Their eyes burned with hunger, their movements sharp and cruel. They expected humans to run, but they did not run. The first shots echoed. Loud cracks filled the halls as human weapons fired back. Sparks exploded, bodies fell. The corridor became a battlefield of light and shadow. The smell of burning metal mixed with blood, the air thick with smoke. The man fired his weapon, each shot tearing through the darkness. He moved with speed, born not from training but from desperation. Around him, humans fought with everything they had. Hands, knives, guns, even bare fists. They were outnumbered, but they were not broken. The invaders roared, their voices shaking the walls. But the humans roared louder. The battle spread across the station. In the hangars, engineers turned broken ships into weapons. In the lower decks, children were hidden away while their parents fought. In the command room, humans hacked into systems the Council had locked, turning defense grids toward the enemy. They did not wait for orders. They did not wait for help. They fought because there was no other choice. Outside, the galaxy burned. Ships collided. Laser fire ripped across the skies. Explosions flashed brighter than stars. The void was alive with war, and the sound of destruction was endless. The man looked out through the shattered glass of the observation deck. He saw a human ship, small and weak, slam into a massive enemy cruiser. The explosion lit the sky, tearing the enemy apart. Sacrifice, strength, unity. Tears filled his eyes, but his voice was strong. That night, the galaxy witnessed something it had never seen before. For the first time, humans were not the weakest. They were the fire in the darkness. The first strike had come, and humanity had answered. The battle had ended, but the silence that followed was worse than the noise of war. The space station floated like a wounded beast. Its walls were cracked, its lights flickered weakly, and smoke drifted through the corridors like mist. The smell of fire and blood was everywhere. The screams had faded, replaced now by the soft cries of the wounded and the heavy footsteps of those still alive. The man walked slowly through the destruction. His boots crunched against shattered glass and broken metal. He saw faces staring at him, faces pale, tired, and filled with pain. Some were covered in burns, others held bloody bandages. Many carried the same question in their eyes. Was it worth it? Humans had fought harder than anyone believed possible. They had held the lines, they had struck back, and they had survived the first wave. But survival came at a price. Entire sections of the station were gone, ripped open into space. Families were separated. Friends were lost. He passed a mother kneeling on the floor, clutching the lifeless hand of her child. His chest tightened, and he looked away, but the sound of her sobs followed him. He kept walking. He had to. The council had fled. When the enemy struck, many of the alien leaders escaped into their ships, abandoning the station to its fate. They left humans behind, believing they would fall quickly. But the humans did not fall. They stood, and they bled, and they survived while the mighty council hid. That was the price. The man entered the command room. Screens were shattered, wires hung loose, and sparks flashed weakly from broken panels. A small group of humans worked there, faces grim, voices hoarse. They tried to bring the systems back online, but everything was failing. "We can't hold like this," one of them said. "We lost too many," he nodded. He knew it was true. But giving up was not an option. "Not now." He stepped to the center of the room, his voice rising above the silence. "We knew this day would come. We knew the cost would be heavy. But hear me now. We are still here. We are alive. And as long as we breathe, we fight." The words echoed in the broken room. Some lowered their heads, tears falling. Others clenched their fists, holding on to hope. But deep inside, he knew. Survival was not enough. Humans had a weapon. Not one of metal, but one of sacrifice. And now they would need it. He remembered the hidden project they had been building, the desperate plan no one else knew about. It was not finished, not safe. If they used it, many would die. But if they did nothing, all would be lost. The choice was clear. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself. And with one choice, we could either save ourselves or destroy everything. That night, the humans gathered again in the chamber where it had all begun. Soldiers, engineers, scientists, farmers, everyone who was left. Their faces were tired, their bodies broken, but their spirits burned. The man told them the truth. He spoke of the invasion, the losses, the betrayal of the council, and then he told them about the weapon, the last chance, the last hope. At first, there was silence. Then voices rose in fear, in anger, in doubt. Some said it was too dangerous. Some said it was madness. But others spoke with fire in their voices. "What else do we have? We fight or we die. We are humans. We endure. Always." Slowly, the silence turned to resolve. Heads nodded. Eyes burned. One by one, they agreed. The weapon would be used. But the price? The price would be survival itself. Later, as the station drifted in the cold darkness, the man stood by the observation window. The stars stretched endless before him, silent and uncaring. The broken red sun still burned faintly, casting its dying light across the glass. He thought of Earth, of the oceans and forests he might never see again. He thought of the families broken, the voices silenced, and yet he felt no despair. Only fire, only resolve, because humanity was not finished. The enemy believed the first strike had broken them, but they were wrong. Humans had only begun. The man placed his hand on the cold glass and whispered, "This is the price we pay. But we will survive. We will endure. And when they see what we unleash, the galaxy will never doubt us again." Behind him, the station's engines roared weakly to life. The weapon was almost ready. The humans were prepared. The price was survival. And survival was worth everything. The station was quiet again, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence before something great, something terrible. The humans had made their choice. They would use the weapon. In the dark hangars, engineers worked with fire in their eyes. Sparks flew as metal bent beneath their tools. Old ships were rebuilt, broken weapons reforged. Every piece of technology, every scrap of steel was turned into something new. They had no fleets like the Council. They had no giant war machines. What they had was something else, an idea, unity, sacrifice, resolve. The weapon was not a single ship or a single bomb. It was many parts, hidden pieces joined together, powered by the will of those who refused to die. It was human desperation turned into human strength. The man who first heard the whisper stood at the center of it all. His voice carried through the halls as people worked. This is our chance. They will not expect it. They think we are broken. They think we are weak. But tonight we show them who we are. And then it began. The enemy returned. Dark ships cut through the stars, engines roaring, weapons glowing red. They came like shadows, filling the void with fire. The Council fleets were scattered, powerless, hiding far away. No one stood against the invaders, no one, except the humans. The station shook as the first blasts hit. Lights flickered, alarms screamed again. But this time there was no fear. This time, the humans were ready. The hidden weapon activated. Dozens of small ships launched from the hangars, not sleek and perfect, but rough and scarred, patched together with human hands. They moved fast, darting through space like sparks in the dark. The enemy laughed at them. To their eyes, these were no ships, only broken toys. But then the toys fought back. The first wave struck hard. Human ships dove straight into enemy fire, engines burning, guns blazing. They moved with wild courage, unafraid of death. Some crashed directly into enemy cruisers, exploding in brilliant fire, tearing holes into the massive ships. Sacrifice became their strength. Inside the station, the weapon's core burned. A great pulse of energy spread through the void, bending signals, breaking communications. The enemy fleet staggered. Their commands failed. Their ships turned blind in the darkness. The aliens who once mocked humanity watched in silence, their eyes wide with shock. From distant outposts, from hidden corners of the Council. They saw it. Humans fighting, humans dying, humans winning. For the first time in history, the galaxy witnessed something it never believed possible. The weakest were standing against the strongest. The man looked out through the cracked glass of the command deck. He saw ships burning, stars flashing with fire, shadows twisting in the void. He saw humans falling one by one, but never giving up. He saw the enemy breaking apart, their proud fleets scattering in fear. Tears filled his eyes, but his voice was steady. This is who we are. This is humanity. The invaders roared in anger, but their strength was crumbling. Every time a human ship was destroyed, two more struck back. Every time a soldier fell, another took their place. The weapon pulsed again, a second great wave of light, and enemy ships exploded under its power. Silence spread through the battlefield. The invaders began to retreat, and then, for the first time, the galaxy was afraid of humans. The Council, who once mocked them, now watched in stunned silence. The proud races with their silver skins and iron scales lowered their eyes. The humans, once the smallest, once the weakest, had done what no one else could. They had stood against the storm and forced it to break. The man closed his eyes, the whisper fading from his mind at last. For so long it had haunted him, warning him, guiding him. Now it was gone, replaced by silence, real silence, the silence of victory. Around him, humans cheered. They hugged, they wept, they raised their voices into the dark halls. They were not celebrating power. They were celebrating survival, but beyond survival, they had gained something greater. Respect. Fear. The galaxy had changed. The man turned to his people, his voice quiet but filled with fire. And at that moment, the galaxy finally understood who humans truly were. The station floated in the broken light of the red star. Ships burned in the void, and in that fire, a new chapter of history began. Humans had shocked the galaxy. The battlefield was quiet now. The stars stretched endlessly, cold and bright. shining over the wreckage of war. Burned ships floated silently through the void, their broken pieces drifting like ghosts. The red sun still glowed faintly, its dying light washing everything in shades of blood and ash. The space station survived. Scarred, cracked, almost falling apart, but it survived. And so did the humans. Inside the halls, the silence was heavy. People moved slowly, their bodies bruised, their faces pale. Some carried the wounded, others carried nothing but memories. The price had been terrible, but they had paid it. And they had won. The man walked through the corridors, his steps echoing softly. Everywhere he looked, he saw signs of sacrifice. Bloodstains on the walls, names written hastily on broken panels to remember the dead. Families sitting together, holding one another as if afraid to let go, yet in their eyes there was not only grief, there was pride. For the first time in history, humans had stood against an enemy no one else dared to face. For the first time, the galaxy looked at them not as weak, not as fragile, but as something far greater. Survivors, fighters, a force that could not be broken. The council returned days later. Their ships came crawling back, too late to help, too late to change anything. They entered the station in silence, their heads bowed, their arrogance shattered. The mighty races who once laughed at humans now walked carefully, their voices low, their eyes uncertain. They had seen the truth. The man stood before them in the council chamber. His uniform was torn, his face marked with ash, but his voice was steady. "You left us to die," he said simply. His words were not shouted, but they struck harder than any weapon. "You called us weak. You abandoned us, but we did not break. We stood when no one else would. And now you know the truth." The chamber was silent. No alien dared to argue. No one mocked. No one laughed. For in their hearts they knew humanity had changed the galaxy forever. Outside, the wreckage of the enemy still drifted. Ships that once carried terror now floated dead and empty. The invasion had failed, not because of the Council, not because of the powerful races, but because of humans. The ones everyone thought would fall first, and in that silence, respect was born. Fear too, perhaps, but above all, respect. The man returned to the observation deck. He stood before the wide glass, staring out at the stars. His reflection was tired, older than before, but his eyes burned with fire. He thought of Earth, far away. He thought of the oceans, the forests, the cities. He thought of the families who would hear of this day, who would learn that humanity was no longer just a small voice in the galaxy. They were now something more. Behind him, children laughed softly. It was rare, fragile laughter, but it carried through the broken halls like sunlight through clouds. He turned and smiled for the first time in days. That sound was the true victory, not the weapon, not the battle, but the survival of hope. He whispered to himself, words carried only to the stars. That day, we did not just survive. We shocked the galaxy, and the stars seemed to listen. The story of humanity spread quickly. Across distant planets, in hidden colonies, in the grand halls of the alien races, the tale was told. How the weakest stood against the strongest. How they fought with fire and sacrifice. How they refused to bow. And so, a new legacy was born. Humans were no longer the outsiders, no longer the forgotten race at the edge of the council. They were the reminder that strength does not always come from size or power. Sometimes, it comes from the will to keep fighting, even when the universe says you cannot. The galaxy would never forget.